is this place? How did I get here?
As a big fan of video game horror, I've been looking forward to SOMA for quite a long time now. Frictional's previous release, Amnesia, is quite possibly the most frightening game ever made, and a sci-fi based follow-up has always been an enticing premise for me, especially after being disappointed by A Machine for Pigs, the Chinese Room's scare-free semi-sequel to Amnesia. Over the weekend I managed to get a hands-on with a preview demo featuring the first third of SOMA, and while I can confirm that this game is very scary, it never quite reaches the heights of blood-curdling terror you may have experienced in Amnesia. Instead, SOMA brings with it two different types of horror. There's the typical panic-driven fear of being chased and hunted by something terrible and unknown, while the other is a kind of sickening horror, brought on by discovering things so dark and twisted that your mind cannot really comprehend the situation.
I need it. Why? I was okay. I was happy.
From previous gameplay trailers I'd watched, I'd assumed SOMA was set in space. The dilapidated tech, flickering lights, and grimy metallic corridors certainly suggest you are on board a derelict spacecraft, but it's not long until the game reveals that you, playing as a character named Simon, are actually trapped under the sea in a research station. A research station covered in weird, organic, but at the same time electric, barnacle-like growths, and populated by nightmarish robots, some of whom believe they are actually human.
Are you blind? It's me, Carl Semke. Wrangler? Any of this sound familiar to you?
There's no clue as to why you're there or why the station is in such disrepair, but by exploring, examining notes, listening to audio logs and talking to inhabitants, you can slowly start piecing together the terrible events that have led up to your present situation. It's a pretty standard way of advancing the narrative, but thanks to the incredibly immersive atmosphere and some great pacing between the action, puzzles and exploration, everything flows really well and your quest for answers never gets boring.
Hi Simon, I'm Catherine. Have you figured out what's going on yet?
Me? I was hoping you'd have some answers.
The gameplay changes up quite nicely a little later on when you suddenly find yourself outside the research centre, at the bottom of the ocean. With murky waters obscuring your vision and only the sound of Simon's breathing and the occasional muffled scream to keep you company, it can get pretty claustrophobic, and it's all too easy to get turned around if you don't follow the lights that guide your way. The underwater segments nicely link each area of the research centre together, and during the demo I had to make my way out into the deep blue multiple times. It's a haunting location with some great scenery like this sunken submarine, so the fact that this experience isn't a one-off and forms a large part of the gameplay is rather welcome. But anyway, this is a horror game, so I suppose I should talk a little bit about the horrors. Enemy-wise, I ran into 3 different types during the demo, and with Simon having no way to defend himself, they all needed to be avoided, which basically means having to hide in the shadows until they can't see you. If you get in close proximity to any of them, it results in digital artifacts breaking up your vision. The closer you get, the more aggressive the interference becomes. It's basically a nice futuristic take on Amnesia's insanity effect. The first enemy type I came across was a kind of lumbering, luminescent testicle of a robot. They're easy to sneak past, but incredibly fast on their feet if they spot you and give chase. There's floating bots out in the water. They gently swim along pre-programmed paths and are easily avoided. And finally, there's these humanoid creatures. These bloated brutes have a glowing cluster of barnacles in place of their heads, and because they're much quicker to spot you and give chase, they're the scariest of the bunch. The game loses a bit of tension early on when you realise the majority of creatures will only stun you rather than kill you outright, but that doesn't stop most of the initial encounters being absolutely terrifying. For me though, the darkest moments in the game, and the ones that really stuck with me after I'd finished playing, happened when I met the previous inhabitants of the station. Once human but now inhabiting dying robotic bodies, these poor souls are mostly unaware of their plight. I'd love to go into more details and even show you some footage of one of the most twisted things I encountered revolving around a woman named Amy, and you'll know what I mean when you see her, but telling you anything about these events will rob them of the impact they deserve, and it will lessen your overall experience.
Hello?
The preview demo ended on a cliffhanger, and now I'm desperate to play more, to explore more of the world Frictional has created, and to continue unravelling the mysteries. It took me just under 3 hours to play through that first third of the game, so we're probably looking at around a 10-hour experience overall, which is probably just enough time for SOMA to completely break my brain. SOMA has shades of Dead Space, the first one, and Bioshock, the second one, and it also brought to mind movies like The Sphere or Event Horizon. Basically, if you dig sci-fi horror in any way, SOMA is a game I'd 100% recommend you to try when it releases on PC and PS4 this September.
D-Horse is wearing a cool space visor, and apparently you can make him defecate. And D-Dog can hunt down items and keep enemies busy while you take them out.
I'm just gonna spend the whole game driving around in my Jeep with my wolf companion, listening to rad music with our cool matching eye patches. Best game ever.